Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. So AP News has reported that the Houthi rebels in Yemen, you know, the guys that have been firing missiles, and there's currently a coalition of the United States, United Kingdom, even Germans have sent warships just to knock down their rockets going over. Well, these Houthi rebels, as they're calling themselves, supposedly have acquired hypersonic missile technology. Yeah. Now, the thing to know about the Houthi rebels, and I might be saying that wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments, but the Houthi rebels are funded by Iran and a couple of their allies. And that way they can make attacks against other groups. And it's essentially a good way to keep the rebels from deciding, hey, let's go after these other people instead. Because that's kind of what rebel groups do. Remember the Mujahideen in the 1980s? They were the good guys. They turned to the Taliban in the 1990s, and we know what happened there. Nothing good. So Iran is actually doing a smart thing by funding them and keeping them away from their borders. Yeah, you go to the opposite side of the Arabian Peninsula and you fire your rockets anywhere you want. Now, the thing I'm finding difficult to believe, well, first of all, I really disbelieve the claims of a hypersonic missile. And secondly, I doubt the ability of the Houthis. Let me explain. Listen the whole way before you start accusing me of anything. First of all, they claim hypersonic missiles are really maneuverable and that makes them difficult to take down. There's an equation out there about energy and how you can trade speed for maneuverability, but you can't have both. You have to start in a high energy situation, then you go for speed or maneuverability. They come in fast. They are difficult to shoot down, but a hypersonic missile gets there by pure brute speed. It's not going to do tricks because the SR-71 was virtually hypersonic, depending on who you listen to, and it took it miles and miles to turn around. I think something like 20, 30 miles for it to turn around, and F-15 can turn on the drop of a dime. Whereas supposedly this thing going Mach 8 is going to be super maneuverable. No, physics doesn't work that way. Aerodynamics doesn't work that way. So while I believe it's possible they have a really, really fast missile, I don't think it's truly hypersonic, not if it's maneuverable at all. The second thing is logistics. You always got to look at logistics whenever you look at any weapon system. This is a problem they encountered in World War II on both sides. They would build a super weapon system and then realize they couldn't make enough spare parts to maintain it. Well, you're sending this hypersonic missile into a desert, which poses its own special problems, and then you're expecting it to launch as normal in the hands of, how am I going to say this? No offense to the Houthi people, there's the civilians there are equally as smart as everybody else, and they're capable of doing anything that they want. But you can't expect me to give a Patriot battery to the Vietnamese in the 1960s, the North Vietnamese, sorry, the two Vietnams there, and have them operate it to perfection. And Iran's technology is considerable. It's definitely nothing to take lightly, but why would they send one of their top missile batteries into an incredibly hostile environment, not only because of the wear and tear of being in the desert, but also being maintained with whatever's around handy locally? Think about it. You need to run a sortie. You're going to go grab the first part you can, whether it be at Walmart, Canadian Tire, Love's. You're going to grab the first thing, stick it in there because it needs to be in the field and ready to go. Again, the Houthis, I think, are perfectly capable of doing that, but they don't have that ability to manufacture their own parts. And Iran may or may not be sending their own technicians, but remember Empire Strikes Back when they're on Hoth and they're saying they're having trouble adapting the snow speeders to how cold it was. And this is a future environment. It's one of the most profound lines in the whole series, that they have trouble maintaining things in such a cold environment. The opposite's true in the desert. Dust gets in anything. When you're operating a supposedly solid fuel rocket, that this thing supposedly is, it gives you an advantage that you don't need to follow it around with fuel trucks all day. Your disadvantage is sand gets everywhere. And there's another Star Wars quote about sand I think you all know. So while I believe they might be providing the Houthi rebels, Houthi, whatever it is, with an advanced missile, I don't really think it's hypersonic. The Russians claim to have a hypersonic missile that no one has ever seen operating. The Kinzhal, which there's some debate whether it can actually go over Mach 5. The Chinese claim to have a hypersonic missile. And the Russians and Chinese they're definitely not dummies. They're definitely clever. They have the industrial base. And Iran, we're going to put them one tier below China. That's not an insult to Iran. These are high precision parts that they're manufacturing for these rockets to get up to speed. And I know a little something about rockets because my grade 6 teacher had a rocketry club. And yes, model rockets are a far cry from a war rocket or mortars as I'm more familiar with. But it's a lot of time and effort for not a lot of outcome. They're saying these things pose a threat to, the United States, United Kingdom, and Germany. I'm going to say the Houthis are wise enough as a people not to use them against U.S. warships. There's considerable defenses, and they're getting better all the time. No, you want to pick a soft target, hit it, and make sure, like Israel's Iron Dome doesn't have a chance of intercepting it. That would be more the way that you would use it. But, as I said, simple logistics, just keeping the thing running. Oh, it blew a tire because it ran into a rock. The Soviets, and I say the Soviets on purpose, engineered their jets and trucks and everything to operate in adverse conditions. But while they did that, they didn't engineer them to run for a long time. Now, doubtless, the Houthi strategists aren't planning on keeping these missiles for a long time. But we know they're relatively untested, and that's the advantage Iran gets out of this. They get their missiles tested, and they gain plausible deniability. Oh, we didn't know they were going to fire one, we just gave them. Yeah, they're a rebel group. This escalating set of wars in the Middle East seems apocalyptic. It seems to fit biblical descriptions. And I'm going to counter that with saying there's been war in the Middle East for more or less 3,000 to 4,000 years. There's some evidence Jericho was around 10,000 BC. And Jericho was famous for what? Its walls. You build walls to keep people out. There are more creative solutions like Ketel Hayuk, where they built the entrances on the top of the building. That seems to have been to keep predators away. But walls, like what Jericho had, are strictly human defense systems. And there's never really stopped being wars in the Middle East. Baghdad went through a few centuries where it was the jewel of the world for its knowledge and learning. The Mongols sacked them, and they spent the rest of the time they were in charge trying to maintain the knowledge that they had. That's why the Europeans looked down on them, because when the Europeans started to peak, they found these supposedly backwards people who were trying to retain their knowledge. The Europeans didn't suspect how close in time they had come to meeting the person that burned their city. Now, the Houthis are not environmental, they're religious activists, taken to the next level, of course. And you're never going to convince anybody you're right by threatening them with physical force. That's usually seen as you losing said argument. I'm afraid that's what we need to start doing. We can't lose sight of the fact that people are human. People have opinions. People want other people to share their opinions. And you know what? I'm okay with two people arguing in the street, as long as I make sure they're not throwing punches or, reaching for any sort of weapon. Yeah, I'm cool with that. But when you start lobbing missiles, screw everybody in that general direction kind of deal, that's not how you win a war. That's not how you win a debate. So let's build bigger and better words, bigger and better concepts. We do have to defend ourselves. The world's not a utopia yet. Utopia quite literally meaning no place. But that has to be our only avenue forward. As an old warrior, been in the trenches, it's nothing but misery. And I can appreciate there were people, we called them keeners. They were totally behind the cause. Oh yeah, we're gonna go there. We're gonna kick some blank at us. And I have to say blank because it's the flavor of the week that you shove in there. We're gonna get this person, and I appreciate the humor that other veterans put online. It's some things you just gotta experience. There's no substitute for it. But ultimately, and I don't want to say give peace a chance, but ultimately we need a better way of going about this, because the old ways are not working. We wind up with so many people shooting at each other, we can't even figure out who's who. So, I hope these problems will be solved one day. I really doubt it'll happen during my generation's time. Hopefully with the next generation, maybe the generation after that. Or maybe not. Maybe we spread it into the solar system and the Baha'i people take over Europa. The Jewish people decide to take the moon. And, the Muslim people, they all settle on Mars. Who knows? That's one possibility, and maybe that's a way that you keep people apart. But you're still going to have immigration, emigration. These forces are never going to stop. So it's better we learn to live together now on this planet than try to figure it out in some future where we're deploying nukes and stuff like that. That's the scenario Battletech arises from, and sometimes it's oddly prescient. With that, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share, because sharing is caring. Don't forget to click the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. And we hope you have a fantastic day.